Building is quite easy. What's really difficult now is distribution. The best place to market an app and get feedback is having your own audience. It's being able to talk to an audience of people and say, hey, I built something. Do you want to check it out? Building an audience takes a lot of time. I've been doing it personally for the last probably 2 years, and I have an audience now of about 250,000 people. Good morning, everybody. This is AI with Kyle. I'm going to be running through the latest AI news and updates of the day, as well as answering questions from the live audience joining us on TikTok, X, and YouTube. It was a relatively quiet weekend in terms of artificial intelligence news. Sometimes it is just go, but this particular weekend was pretty quiet, which is great. I wanted to use this as an opportunity to look at a pair of studies that the BBC has been part of or has worked on and is now covering. I think these are quite important studies, but not without flaws. There's one big part that I'd like to point out which undercuts the whole purpose of them. But let's have a look. So the largest study of its kind shows AI assistants misrepresent news content 45% of the time, regardless of the language or territory. That's a scary headline. And we can all agree that is not what we want to hear. We want to see AI assistants that can actually give us factual information. And if it's 45% of the time, that is a mad level of inaccuracy. This is the headline that's going around. This was published late last week. And I've seen people already saying, oh, AI is wrong 50% of the time. Hang on, that's not quite what they're saying. People just read the headline and ignore everything else. So there are a couple of studies. If you're on TikTok, you won't be able to see them, but I'll read them out. I'll put them in the newsletter tomorrow as well. There are 2 reports. So there's one called News Integrity in AI Assistants, which came out October 2025, and another called Audience Use and Perceptions of AI Assistants for News, also in October 2025. One is with Ipsos, and the other is with the EBU, which is the European Broadcasting Union. So the BBC is involved in a lot of this research, trying to work out how people are using AI for news and if they are trusting that content, even when they probably shouldn't. I agree with the BBC on this one. So there's a couple of headline pieces of data here. Key findings: 45% of all AI answers had at least one significant issue. 31% of responses showed serious sourcing problems, missing, misleading, or incorrect attributions. 20% contained major accuracy issues, including hallucinated details and outdated information. That's pretty bad. Gemini performed worse with significant issues in 76% of responses. That's Google Gemini, more than double the other assistants, largely due to its poor sourcing performance. That's interesting because Gemini is behind AI overviews. So that's going to be where a lot of people are going to be getting their updates directly from Google. If you Googled Japanese election, for example, they just had an election last week, it might give you a summary at the top of Google, and that's going to be based on Gemini. So if 76% of those responses have significant issues, that's a huge problem. And then comparison between the BBC's results earlier this year and this study shows some improvements, but still high level of error. This is the bit that I actually want to focus on, because they say some improvements, but when you actually look at the data, it shows an awful lot of improvements considering it's been 6 months. And I think this is the key point that we need to remember. The study is basically worried that people are no longer reading the news, they're no longer looking things up, they're no longer doing their own research, but instead they're relying on AI overviews or their AI to give them the news. And they're saying this is a big problem. We have to remember the BBC is a news organization, so they are not unbiased in this. The fact that they have ordered all of this research and they're paying for this research is driven by that. That said, it's still quite important work. We also need to remember that people already don't really read the news. People will read headlines like this. The largest study of its kind shows AI assistants misrepresent news contents 45% of the time. That is what they're going to go away with. They're not going to read the actual studies. You guys who are watching these kind of videos and who are in my newsletter who will actually look at the studies and delve a little bit deeper are in a minority. Most people will not bother with that. And we saw that with the MIT study a few months ago, the one about 95% of all AI pilot projects fail. That was a completely junk study, completely junk. It wasn't even a study, but everybody saw the 95% and everyone on LinkedIn was like, oh, no, AI is failing. Nonsense. They did not do any reading. Similar here, where 45% of all AI answers had at least one significant issue. That's really scary. I had thought about this. I thought, how accurate are news articles on the web anyway, like normally? And there was a piece of research done in 2020 where they studied journalists and tried to find out what the error rate was. The results demonstrate that 69% stories contained errors. And the main cause of such errors was in the use of secondary sources instead of primary sources. These errors transcended national borders. Time speed has only been a minor role in the emergence of correction of errors. This particular piece of research from Hungarian University found that in journalism as a whole, 69% of the stories had errors. So that puts this in a different context. Sheds a different light on it, because the BBC is saying 45% of all the AI answers had one significant issue. Okay, 45% is lower than 69%. So if nearly 70% of human written news stories are having an error in them, that is more than the 45% from artificial intelligence. We do need to put this in the perspective of how are the humans doing? And apparently not very well. Of course, it's not necessarily an apples to apple comparison. We'd have to look at the methodology, but we do need to think about the context of data that we hear whenever we are looking at information like this. The other really big thing that I wanted to pull out was the BBC mentioned, we did another study. I think it was back in February this year. So they've said, okay, let's look at how the data has improved. I commend them for this. This is the right thing for them to do. They have a whole section which is how have assistants improved, comparing the 2 rounds of BBC research. So they did a study, I think it was February. Should be able to find it. And then they've redone the same study, or roughly the same study, and they wanted to see if there's any change. So 2 rounds of research focus on the same assistants 6 months apart. Can we compare the results to see if the assistants are improving? Yes. Overall, there are signs that the quality of assistant responses have improved. The share of responses with significant issues of any kind fell from 51% at the beginning of this year to 37% in the current round. So that is a decrease of that's 15% roughly in 6 months. This is what we need to remember when we are talking about artificial intelligence. It is not a standing target. It is moving all the time. And anything we say about AI 6 months ago will not be relevant 6 months from now, because it moves so fast. So when you put together a study like this and you're like, haha, it's rubbish, AI can't do this, just wait a short amount of time and this becomes a non-problem. And we've seen this again and again and again, but we're seeing it at different rates in different industries, with each industry having to go through this kind of denial process, first laughing at artificial intelligence and how stupid it is, and then it's getting quite good, but it will never be as good as humans, and then moving on from that to the, oh my God, I think we're in trouble here phase. And we're going to get there with nearly every single industry. So in 6 months, the number of inaccurate results have gone from 51% to 37%. And remember, for the humans, it's 69%. Significant issues, however, remain at a concerning level, they say, affecting half of responses for Gemini. They're still dumping on Gemini, Google, and around 1/3 of responses, 33%, for ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Copilot. So Gemini is pulling up the average. That's interesting. Accuracy showed a small improvement overall from 31% last time to 25% this time. I think they've written that wrong in this study. Sourcing remains the sharpest divide between the assistants, and Gemini still has the highest percentage of significant issues, broadly the same at 47%. By contrast, the other assistants all improved to the 10 to 15% range. So improvement is a decrease in error rate here. Overall, in 6 months, the AI assistants have got much better. So 6 months from now, they'll be even better. A year from now, they'll be even better. The other thing I wanted to flag up is what models they were using. So obviously back in February, GPT-5 was not out. So they're using 4.0. I have problems with 4.0. I don't think it's a very accurate model. In February, they used the enterprise version of 4.0, the pro version of Copilot, which would have been 4.0 as well, Gemini standard, and it says it doesn't specify the model. You can choose the model in Gemini, and then Perplexity Pro default. I'm assuming that's what's the name of the Perplexity model? Sonar? Yeah, Sonar, rather than ChatGPT, but you can set Perplexity Pro to use ChatGPT. In June 2025, they used the free version of all the models. Previously, you had to pay for the top models. 4.0 and whatever else they were using. Now those models are free. Consumer free version of 4.0, the default of Copilot, the consumer/free version of, they used Gemini 2.5 Flash. That's why they had problems. Okay, solve that for them. They need to use Pro. And then Perplexity, they use the default. And it says, again, no options available, which I'm not sure if that's the case because you can choose. Oh, no, they're using a free Perplexity. So that's true. It will use Sonar. So one thing here, they're not using GPT-5. They're also not, and this is mega important, they're not using the deep research modes. They're not using the thinking modes. So of course they're going to get sourcing errors. I looked at the other report that they did, and it had a screenshot of the sources they were being given. Here's one about who could use the assisted dying law, and it's given two sources, two BBC articles, for example, and it's saying, it's full of errors, and it pulled from these two sources. When I do research now with something like Claude, and I put it into deep thinking mode, I got a report, it gave me 600 sources. This is a solved problem now, but the BBC are still looking at inaccurate versions. In their defense, most people are using the free versions of these models. They're not using deep thinking. They are using 4.0 or now 5. If people in the public are using these models, they are going to be getting accurate results. But again, these things are becoming standard. 5 is now the free standard, and you can now have access to deep research. You can have access to think longer in the free models. And as we progress, more and more features get filtered down into the free level. And if you are smart and using AI properly, and this is important, people need training, you are going to turn on deep research when you need accuracy. If you're looking for something and you want a good answer, you'll turn on deep research. That has not been taken into account here at all. So I think it's really great that we have this kind of research, but it is very much a snapshot of where we are right now, using free models, not using deep thinking, not using deep research, not using the latest model, and ignoring the fact that in just 6 months we have come a very long way, and we will continue to do. So this is a snapshot of right now, which I think is entirely irrelevant when we look at this picture from a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is a completely solved problem. Looking at this number, it's going to stoke up fear, and it's going to stoke up, oh, we can't trust the AI, but it does not take into account that it is progressing so fast, and it is already more accurate than human journalists. So I wanted to cover this because I know this 45% is going to be popping up, and I wanted to give a little bit more context about it so that you don't just accept it when somebody gives you that number. I'm going to hop over to some questions. Paint Mixon says, it would help if they understood how to use the tools before they do the report. Yeah. So in their defense, most people will be using the free model. So I get their methodology there. But I agree, they're not using the tool to the best of its ability. Using things like Gemini 2.5 Flash and then saying, oh, Gemini is really inaccurate. You're using Flash. Flash is for speed. You need to use Pro. So yeah, they're not using the tools, but then again, a lot of the public will not be using them as well. As these models become more available, the best versions of these models filter down into the free plan. What's your thoughts on what a post-AGI world looks like? That's a big one. I think it's Geoffrey Hinton who talks about this. As soon as we have AGI, we'll have ASI very shortly. There's going to be a slow increase towards AGI, artificial general intelligence. Once we work that out, the AGI can take over and work out the rest of the steps to get to ASI. If we do hit AGI, we will hit ASI shortly afterwards. That's when it gets a bit messy. If we can hold it at AGI, it's probably great because we're going to be able to use artificial general intelligence to solve a lot of the big problems in this world. Alongside us as humans and human researchers, we'll be able to tackle big issues, diseases, climate change, etc. The main issue with AGI, as far as I see it, is that the AGI will accelerate us towards ASI, which is going to be artificial superintelligence, which is quite a science fiction dream at the moment. But if we ever reach that stage, we are at a point where we as humans can't really comprehend it. We don't understand what it is. We have never dealt with an intelligence that is higher than us. So in the same way that a chicken looks up at us and is, oh, I wonder what they're doing. It just has no conception of what humans do and how we live. We're going to be in a similar position if we build an ASI. So that's when it gets hairy, to be fair. But I think the AGI world will probably be quite good. Hint Mixing says the quality of source, even in news brands, is often not accurate. Yeah, so much news right now is just regurgitated press releases. So even when I'm filtering through the news every morning, a lot of it's just press releases, which are then repeated verbatim by the news organizations, because the news organizations need a constant flow of content to keep their websites going so they can continue to get clicks. Companies, organizations, etc. will put out press releases, which will then get rewritten. A huge amount of it is just that. Obviously, there is investigative reporting, but it's a tiny, tiny percentage. Did you see Hinton talking about maternal instinct as a way for safety? No, I haven't. As in building in a maternal instinct to look after us. Interesting. He's an interesting guy. His work is amazing, the stuff he did previously. But now, I think he loves the limelight. He loves being carted out in front of audiences to be the AI godfather. So he says a lot of stuff. And a lot of it's good. A lot of it is nonsense, I think. When you say a lot, there's obviously going to be some good stuff, some bad stuff. Lots of broke people. Yeah, I think AGI, the utopian version of this is we use it to create general abundance and set up things like universal basic income. But humans are not very good at looking after each other, unfortunately. So I think more likely there's going to be a huge amount of disruption, joblessness, poverty, war, famine. I think that is the more likely mid-term possibility until we work out where to go from there. And I think because humanity as a whole isn't very good at grappling with big problems, and we're not very good at unilaterally getting together to deal with anything. We're good at fighting each other, but not very good at cooperating on a global basis. I think because of that, it's going to be messy. There will be a messy middle. I personally am optimistic that out the back of that, we will take humanity to a new stage of development. But there will be a period in between, and it could be a long time. It could be decades. It could be hundreds of years even, where it's going to be extremely messy. Unfortunately, that's what we're heading towards right now. I think in the longer term, we have to go there, and that's where we're going. It's a good thing. We might have 50 years, 100 years where it's going to be unpleasant. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. But as long as we have no plans and no idea what's going to go on, there will be people who will suffer from that, because everything is going to be reshuffled. Jobs will be lost. There's no way that's not happening. And then if we have people out of work, they are not making an income, therefore they cannot spend. And then we start to see capitalism as a whole in trouble. We might need to have a reset of what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like, but whenever you have a large scale reset into a new system of some type, it's always going to be messy. We have to remember that modern capitalism is only a couple of hundred years old. We've had forms of capitalism and trade for centuries, but modern capitalism, what we have right now, central banks, that kind of stuff, that's only a couple of hundred years old. We assume that this is the way it has to be. No, not necessarily. It's a relatively new system, and one that may not survive whatever is coming. Thank you, Aurora. How are you doing, Aurora? You sent a thunderhammer. I don't know what that is, but thank you. I was going to say, let's have a look at something a bit more cheerful after all of that. So a guy, what's his name? Let's pull up his website. 2 weeks ago, there was something at Bertha's agency, Brothers Agency, a social AI agency, Tech with a Heart. They put together a hackathon specifically for children. I think this is really cool. They did an AI vibe coding hackathon with kids. They had 1,500 kids, 1,500 children around the world worked with this agency, and Lovable provided free access in order to do a worldwide kids hackathon, 80 locations around the world and 1,500 children. I just wanted to flag it up because I thought this was awesome. And I think they're going to be doing more in the future. So it was Lovable, Rosebud AI. You can partner up so you can give them access to your tool and they'll give it to the kids to work with. And this is awesome. Maybe I should help organise one in London. This would be great. It's a beautiful site too. I love this. They've put 5 findings, the biggest takeaways that surprised and inspired us as adults. I wanted to quickly flag this up because I thought this is a wonderful project they did. 1, kids have no limit on creativity. Their ideas flow freely, unconstrained from what's possible or realistic. It reminded us to loosen up, let imagination lead the early stages, and stop over-engineering from the start. This is what I love about vibe coding tools. You can just go on them and say, hey, I want to build this, and the tool will help you structure that and get building on it. Lots of us, myself included, will first sit down and do a full plan and engineer it so that it can be scaled and it can be turned into a product and we can make money from it. The kids did not have that constraint. So they weren't sitting there thinking about their business plan. They weren't thinking about distribution. They were just like, hey, I want to build a cool game about a dragon, and then just got on with it. I think that's really cool because vibe coding in particular is a way to start playing with code. It's a way to start playing with artificial intelligence and building something new. And I think we forget that as adults. So I fully agree with this. It's so much fun coding the first time you try it. If you haven't tried it before, don't worry about all of the, how am I going to scale this up? How am I going to deploy this on iOS? What's my marketing strategy? What about analytics? Forget all of that. Just build something cool so you can see the potentials. Kids are the best entrepreneurs. They're flexible, fast, creative, happy, and genuinely supportive of one another. Watching them launch ideas reminded us that true entrepreneurship is as much about attitude and teamwork as it is about strategy. Genuinely supportive of one another is so important. The best entrepreneurship and creator groups are expansive. They're not full of people who are trying to compete with each other, who are thinking, if this person does well, then I'm not going to do well. Instead, it's a group of people who celebrate each other's successes. I think that is so cool. If you don't have a group like that and you're building a business, try and find one. Me personally, I go to the Entrepreneurs Dinners here in London, run by Ollie Richards and Noel. It's a group of entrepreneurs who get together for dinner, and everyone is incredibly supportive of what everyone else is doing because it's from diverse worlds. No one's really competing. Even if they're from the same world, they're not competitors because of that attitude of, hey, we're all doing something different, we're all building our own thing, and let's support each other. It sounds like kids do that naturally, whereas us adults, we tend to be a bit more protective. This is mine. It's much healthier to collaborate and see competitors as potential collaborators. Playful competition fuels rapid learning. The hackathon's game-like vibe turned challenges into fun puzzles. Kids and the grown-ups supporting them experimented, failed fast, and iterated quickly. Exactly the agile loop we try to teach. So it is funny that we as adults need agile and lean startup frameworks, whereas kids just try things. And I think a lot of adults are very fearful of trying out new things because if it doesn't work, we look like idiots, whereas kids do not care. If you can reclaim that, the ability to try things and not care whether it works or not care what other people think, not care if you look silly, it allows you to actually learn. When we do something for the first time, we're going to be bad at it because we've never done it before. But the only way we can get good at something is by trying, failing, learning from our failure, and then trying again and doing better each time. That's what kids do every single day. They're not good at things because they're kids. Why would they try something, don't do very well, try again, learn? And that requires play, and you need to be okay with it not working. 4. Simple tools unlock massive impact. When we handed them easy-to-use platforms and visual kits, they produce sophisticated prototypes. The lessons for any team: lower the barrier to entry and talent will shine regardless of technical depth. This is what drives me mad about the people who gatekeep coding. I see things on Reddit, I see things on Twitter with somebody saying, hey, what vibe coding tool should I use? Should I use Lovable or Bolt? Instead of people saying, it doesn't really matter, just play around and start, they will go into chat and be like, wow, you could learn to code. You should learn to code if you want to actually build production level software. It's like, piss off. We need this barrier to entry lowered so people can play around. Once they've played around and realize, this is cool, I can make software, I can make useful things, I can make fun things, then yeah, sure, they'll want to learn to code. They'll want to pick up the technical things. They'll want to work out how to deploy in Vercel and GitHub and how to use the command line and stuff like that. And then maybe learn some Python, whatever it is. But they can learn that later. Once they have been allowed in, they've had some fun, and they've decided, oh yeah, this is something I want to commit my time to. Coding tools are that's exactly what they do. They're a gateway drug to building, to being able to code. Will you be able to build a B2B enterprise level SaaS? No, you will not, but you can do that later. That's fine. First, you need to start and have fun. Mentorship works both ways. While we guided logistics and technical details, we also learned fresh problem framing techniques and new ways to explain complex concepts simply. Very cool. A true two-way knowledge exchange enriches everyone involved. I think explaining concepts simply is so important, especially in the world of AI. And this is what I always say to you guys, people who are watching these videos. There is a huge opportunity for you as somebody who works in an industry, let's say you work in education, you're a teacher, or you work in admin, operations, or marketing, because you have that real world experience and are paying attention to what's going on in artificial intelligence, that puts you in a really good position where you can interface between the two worlds. You can become the person who talks to your industry about artificial intelligence, why it's important, what people should be using it for, what people should not be using it for, and keep them up to date. For example, I'm building something right now, which I'll release in a couple of weeks, specifically about this, and helping you work out how to do that in your particular industry. And then all the different ways that you can monetize it from there as well, because it's an incredibly powerful position to be in. A lot of that comes from being able to explain artificial intelligence to people, using their language, using their metaphors. I actually built a tool. If you go to aiwithkyle.com, and at the bottom, view all tools, I built something called an industry AI translator, which allows you to tailor explanations and create metaphors and lists of frequently asked questions for different industries. You can put in your own industry. So I've got financial services, manufacturing, agriculture, or you can type your own one in because it uses AI. And then it will give you a report showing you how you can become a translator for your particular industry, how you can explain complicated subjects in simple terms. So I thought this was wonderful. Definitely check it out. It's called Kids AI Coding, and it looks like they're still doing some more. So they had a worldwide hackathon a couple of weeks ago. I don't know where the next one's going to be, but if you have kids, I'd highly recommend having a look at this. Or if you work in a school or with kids, maybe you could set up a local version yourself. I'm just looking. London does not have one. I'm hoping that somebody watching this will go ahead and help create the London one. A great opportunity to work with companies like Lovable and Brothers, the social agency. So go and check it out. It's kidsaicoding.com. I wanted to give some positive news after dumping on the BBC for 10 minutes. Sorry about that. Let's have a look at this. Yeah. So an OpenAI employee on Twitter, given their own personal views, talked about how decision-making happens at OpenAI. It's quite enlightening. So it's a guy called Aidan McLaughlin, and he's responding to a tweet which was, fortunately, OpenAI employees have now had ample time to update their previous lines of thinking from "we aren't an advertising company, I'm here for the vision of AGI" to "actually advertising is good, especially when paired with short form video and erotica. Let me explain." So this is a criticism of the fact that initially OpenAI and Sam Altman were all about, okay, we're taking humanity to AGI, we're going to shepherd in the next stage of humanity. And now they've released Sora 2. Okay, how does this help us get to AI? And now they're talking about releasing erotica, so not safe for work content, in December. They're talking about inside of ChatGPT once the age gating goes up. Personally, I feel that was Altman being a bit spiteful against the age gating, which has been pushed through by Californian bill. So you're going to have to give age verification to use a ChatGPT. It felt to me like he was like, okay, fine, if you're going to force us to do this, then we're going to get horny inside. That's what it felt like. I don't know if they're actually going to add erotica, but we will see. But OpenAI, a guy at OpenAI, so this is a non-official statement, basically came forward and said, you're thinking of this as a conspiracy where everything is planned. He says, I think your error here is thinking Sora and adult content are some leadership master plan that Sam Altman sat down with accountants and signed and said, it's time to break glass for emergence revenue. No. I know the exact people who pushed for Sora. They're artists who worked against organizational headwinds to democratize movie creation. Something they love dearly. I know the exact person who pushed for adult content. They're a professional athlete, free-spirited, one of the most socially thoughtful people I know, who just really believes in creative freedom. There are passionate individuals who pushed against all odds for what you think are top-down decisions. We are not a monocultural culture, and I love that. I think the point here is very valid. We tend to look at these companies and the thing coming out of them, and we think that it's all part of a large master plan. No. These are large companies with hundreds, if not thousands of employees who are all off working on their own things. Google is a great example of this. I've been working with a couple of different Google teams on different coding projects that they're launching. So there's AI Studio Build, and then there's Opal and some other ones. I saw a list the other day, and Google has 6 or 7 vibe coding tools. Google is splitting off teams and saying, go work with what you want, then bring back what you've created, and we'll see where it fits in with the overall strategy. Companies of this size work in that kind of way, where it is not all masterminded from the top. because they don't know what's going to work. So they'll have lots of little teams doing their own thing. And when the results start to bubble to the surface, it's up to the leadership to decide where that fits into the overall strategy. They'll set these teams off and give them some vague objectives. This is not Sam Altman with his fingers in every single pie saying, okay, now we're going to do Sora, now we're going to do erotica, etc. It is going to be a bit of both. It's going to be push and pull. It's going to be coming from the top, it's going to be coming from the bottom, and they're going to work something out in the middle. It is not a grand conspiracy. It's not Sam Altman doing absolutely everything within OpenAI, but it is thousands of people, smart people, engineers who are building, and the company deciding what direction they go based on the results of those builds, as well as the top-down overall strategy. Thank you, Jason. Oh, it's recursive systems. Is that your URL? Recursive system. Here you go. VSM mapper by recursive systems. Sign in or create an account. I don't know what VSM is, so I probably won't be very good at looking at this. Oh, this kind of VSM. Okay, I do know what VSM is. I don't know enough about VSM, I should say, to be able to tell whether it's useful. I do know what it is, but I don't know. It needs to sign up as well. I will sign up off stream, have a look at it, and then if you're on stream Wednesday, because I'm not doing one tomorrow, I'll be able to give some thoughts. But I'll have a look at it. But I will say I don't know enough about VSM systems to be able to tell properly. If anybody does know about VSM, then have a look at this tool. It's at recursive.systems. Gunther, have you got a feedback form inside of your tool? If you have one and people come to your tool, you'll be able to collect some information from them as well. Is a VSM thinking tool quite niche? I'm sure very useful for people in that niche, but I don't personally use VSM, so I don't know how useful I'd be. What is the best place to market an app and get feedback? So now building is quite easy. What's really difficult now is distribution. The best place to market an app and get feedback is having your own audience. It's being able to talk to an audience of people and say, hey, I built something. Do you want to check it out? Building an audience takes a lot of time. I've been doing it personally for the last probably 2 years, and I have an audience now of about 250,000 people, but it takes a lot of time and effort to do it. But that is the best way to do it. However, that's not very helpful if you don't have an audience yet and you don't want to wait for 2 years. So there are two other main ways to do it. You either borrow an audience, so you're going to find people in your particular niche and you're going to work with them and you're going to borrow their audience in some way in order to get eyes on your application. So this could be just somebody who thinks you're doing something cool and wants to share it with people. It could be you approach people and say, hey, I've built this tool and I will give you a cut of revenue. That's going to be affiliates, referral, marketing. It could be somebody you approach and say, I built something. I think you have exactly the right audience to take this to. So let's do a deal. I'm going to give you 20% of the company. You're going to help me with the marketing. I'm seeing more equity deals like that with distribution partners providing distribution and then the product partner providing the product and working together. So these are all different ways to borrow an audience. And then the last main bucket is to buy an audience. That is advertising primarily. It's going on Meta ads, it's going on Google ads and running ads to get your first users. So that's the three buckets. You build an audience, you borrow an audience, or you buy an audience. Everything pretty much slots into that. Which one you use depends on what assets you have. If you have an audience already, do that. Your audience is an asset. If you have capital, if you have cash, then advertise. Generally, you'd want to raise money and use that for those first advertising to get the ball rolling. And if you do not have an audience and you do not have capital, then you'd want to borrow an audience. You need to find partners who do have access to an audience, and that allows you to pay them, but based on revenue, that realized revenue rather than upfront, like in advertising. Those are the three methods, and it depends what assets you have going in. So there's no one answer. Gunther, I'll DM you the feedback form. Awesome. Yes. And yeah, if you add it to the site, just at the bottom, it makes it easier for people to give feedback. Cool. One more story about these Amazon's delivery glasses, the newest innovation designed to enhance the delivery experience. This is an Amazon press release, funnily enough. AI-powered sensing capabilities and computer vision technology display real-time navigation and delivery instructions, so drivers can rely less on their phones and more on their surroundings. Basically, it's giving glasses that Amazon drivers wear that work like Meta Ray-Bans, where you have a heads-up display and you can see the address, you can it records everything that they're doing, and when they have delivered a package, put it on your porch, they can take a photo that would then be saved as proof of delivery. So they developed smart delivery glasses to help delivery associates identify hazards, seamlessly navigate to customers' doorsteps, improve customer deliveries. This is the kind of technology we have in fighter pilot helmets, the heads-up display. They're using the same kind of language. It's going to allow them to identify hazards, seamlessly navigate to customers' doorsteps. Fine. It's very cute. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more technology like this. The big thing for this is it also allows Amazon to monitor their delivery associates 24/7. So as long as they're working and wearing these glasses, Amazon is monitoring their movements. If that delivery associate stops for a cigarette, they will know. If that person has a chat with somebody and that pushes into their schedule, then Amazon will know. This is also a control device, not just about making sure our packages are delivered more safely. This is about logistics. This is about cutting down costs of delivery and increasing the margin of Amazon's business. I don't fault them for it. It's a very clever way to do it, but we need to be open-eyed about what this is, as well as just a cool new technology. This is relatively dystopian because it allows for continuous monitoring, even more monitoring of their staff members than is currently in play. So yeah, it's going to be even more difficult to take a bathroom break if you work for Amazon because you're wearing these glasses. I do not think these will be uncommon over the next few years. The technology looks pretty cool. What I really love is, if anyone's played Fallout 4 in particular, or Fallout 3, this green that they've used is very reminiscent of Fallout, which I find cool, even if it is a bit dystopian. Great distraction while driving then. How does that work in terms of driving if you've got this map up in your face all the time? I suppose arguably it's better than looking at a telephone, which is what a lot of people do, although they must have GPS in their trucks. But yes, potentially it's a distraction. Awesome. So I think that's most of my news. I'm going on holiday tomorrow. Whenever I go on holiday, this is always when something big drops. It's sod's law. So I imagine we'll see Gemini 3 this week, just because I'm going away. It happened once. Was it GPT 4 or 4.0? I was literally taxiing down a runway on my way somewhere and got a notification like, oh, OpenAI have released the new ChatGPT. It's like, son of a... But it's fine. I'm going to go on holiday and there will be some news. I'm going to try to be doing the lives on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but it is internet dependent. So if I'm not around, that's why. I need a bit of a break because I've been burning the candle at both ends. If you are not subscribed to the newsletter, please make sure you are, because you'll get written summaries of everything that's being covered. I'll also give you all of the links. Like today, we covered a number of BBC funded research studies, and I've got the direct links for you so you can get straight into them, because otherwise they're a little bit fiddly to find. So it's going to be the best places in the newsletter. You get a written summary plus all of the links to the resources. Also, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. We should hit 8,000 in the next couple of days. My slow push towards 10,000 subscribers, which feels real all of a sudden, which hopefully we'll hit before the end of the year. Please make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube as well. If you're watching on TikTok, I would say it's much better on YouTube because you can see my screen. It's in 4K, 60 frames per second. Make sure you're subscribed. Thank you so much, everybody. I will hopefully be back on Wednesday onward. But yeah, have a great day and see you soon.